Well, thank you, Chairman Green, for holding this important hearing, for bringing us together with experts that have long advocated for strength, have long advocated for a policy of deterrence and not appeasement. This hearing, unfortunately, is occurring in the aftermath after a heinous terrorist attack on our ally, our strongest ally in the Middle East, Israel. And what we witnessed on the tragic morning of October the 7th was nothing short of barbaric and horrible. It was the deadliest day since the creation of the State of Israel 75 years ago. And it was the deadliest day for Jewish people since the Holocaust. Israelis, Americans, and other foreign nationals died. Many were injured, and others continue to be held hostage, and their whereabouts are unknown. At least 32 Americans were killed in this attack. Let me repeat that. At least 32 Americans were killed in this attack, which makes October the 7th the worst attack on Americans by international terrorism since 9/11. More Americans were killed on October 7th than in the attacks on Khobar Towers in Saudi Arabia in 1996, the USS Cole in 2000, the U.S. Embassy in Beirut in 1983, or the embassies in East Africa in 1998. What happened on October 7th was sickening. These evil and twisted Hamas terrorists, a foreign terrorist organization supported by the Iranian regime, who carried out this cruel and indiscriminate attack that targeted innocent women, babies, children, the elderly, and the entire Jewish population. These attacks should be universally and unequivocally condemned by all. And unfortunately, that has not happened. It's absolutely appalling to see mass gatherings celebrating the loss of life that took place that heartbreaking morning. These gatherings are nothing more than an attempt to not only whitewash the gruesome attacks, but also to deny what transpired on that morning and to push a narrative that could not be further from the truth. New York Mayor Eric Adams recently said, "We are not all right when Hamas believes that they are fighting on behalf of something in their destructive, despicable action that carried out. We are not all right when we still have hostages who have not come home to their family. We are not all right, and we're not going to say we have stiff upper lip and act like everything is fine. Everything is not fine. Israel has a right to defend itself, and that's the right that we know." And I applaud him for saying those words. The hateful rhetoric spewed at these gatherings have created an environment that has left Jewish communities isolated and concerned about their sense of safety and security. We must make it clear that every American has a right to live peacefully and securely in this nation. In addition, the horrific images from Israel that we have seen should invoke the raw emotions that many Americans felt in the fight against terrorism. It's a solemn reminder, and especially on this committee that was formed and created to help ensure that another attack like 9/11 never occurs again on our homeland. As I reflect on the recent tragedy that has unfolded in Israel, I cannot help but remember how the 9/11 Commission report explained that a contributing factor as to why we missed the threat indicators to foresee an attack on our nation was due to a lack of imagination from our intelligence agencies and national security experts. No one in our government could even remotely think that someone would use a commercial airliner as a missile. Yet we saw 4 commercial jets utilized on that morning of 9/11. And when you think you've seen it all, violent extremists are there to prove you wrong. Like before 9/11, none of us could imagine that terrorists would fly across the southern border on paragliders and slaughter innocent civilians celebrating life at a music festival. Yet these terrorists bulldozed and blew holes through concrete barriers, and thousands of terrorists ran through with little to no effort to begin their brutal assault. These attacks, unfortunately, have taught the world that violent Islamic terrorists are continuing to exploit vulnerabilities in the most ingenious ways. We must not lose sight of this reality, and we have to acknowledge the threats posed by these groups. We must also recognize that these threats pose a significant danger to the United States as well. Our border is far less secure than Israel. I know this because I've personally led efforts to help promote the development of border technology between our two nations. The fact that even the most advanced technology could not stop these atrocities from taking place in Israel should keep us up at night here. Our nation has seen a record number of individuals encountered who have either appeared on the known or suspected terrorist watch list or individuals designated as special interest aliens. Just this year, over 150 people that we know about have been encountered at the southern border that match the terror watch list. President Biden must reverse course on his failed Iran policy. Appeasement does not work. We do not negotiate with terrorists. We know firsthand that the Iranian regime has tried to exploit weaknesses in our southwest border. Surely there is a risk that terrorists, including those backed by the Iranian regime, could take advantage of the glaring vulnerabilities and conduct attacks right here in our homeland. If we continue to remain naive about the security posture at our southwest border, then we are bound to suffer the catastrophic consequences that we just saw in Israel. The threat warnings and indicators from terrorist attacks in Israel should serve as a wake-up call to our nation and make us realize that these dangers are present, that they are real. We must secure our southwest border immediately. I would also be remiss if I did not highlight the fact that the Iranian regime is actively targeting Americans here on our soil. They have the desire, and I think they have proven through the greenlighting of Hamas that they have the capacity. The regime has attempted multiple times to silence or exact revenge on government officials and private citizens who speak out against the regime's brutality. And I think we'll hear about that today. Multiple witnesses today have experienced this transnational repression firsthand, and I look forward to hearing that. Lastly, we must also recognize that authoritarian regimes like China, like the Chinese Communist Party, and like Russia are working to advance their strategic goals throughout the Middle East. The Biden administration has failed to lead on the global stage time and time again. And we have demonstrated time and time again through the administration's failed policies to malign actors that talk is cheap and that we will not take.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Sure.
He's making an opening statement.
If
There's
you
no
read the
time limit on an opening statement.
If you read the conference rule,
Very well.
if you read our committee rules, then you'd know that opening statements can go over 5 minutes.
Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
Very well.
Time and time again, we have demonstrated to malign actors that our talk is cheap and that we will not take the hard work necessary to deter evil influences. We must use our leadership to reject these narratives and put on notice those who would rather sympathize with terrorists and refuse to condemn the worst attack against the Jewish people since the Holocaust. I hope that our nation comes together and supports our indispensable ally, Israel, and the Jewish communities across the globe grieving during these trying times. We must also continue to work to rid the world of hateful and anti-Semitic ideology, and I'm calling on my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to do just that, because there are 9 people in this Congress who have refused to do that. 9 people who, when we go to the floor to vote on a resolution supporting our greatest ally, Israel, that intend to vote against that resolution supporting Israel, that voted against a resolution earlier this summer saying that Israel was not an apartheid nation, that Israel was not a racist nation, and that, in fact, Israel was our greatest ally. And I'm calling on you all to help bring us together to condemn terrorist attacks, regardless of who commits them. The security and safety for Jewish people in the state of Israel are non-negotiable. Mr. Chairman, the only strategy that works is peace through strength. The failed policies of the Obama administration with a weak nuclear deal, the failed policies of appeasement, delivering cash, allowing oil sanctions and other sanctions to expire, have set the stage for where we are today. The Biden administration must reverse course, and it starts with rhetoric, and it's followed by policy. And I hope that this committee in this hearing today can let the American people know that we do not and will not allow terrorists to control the narrative and that we will use peace through strength.